by 4 we'll start. So it's over to Manjari. She'll start.
Yeah, ma'am. Sure, ma'am.
So our speaker has joined in.
Yes, ma'am.
No one else. Are we waiting for anyone? Rashmi, any idea?
I'm
Yes, I've
Rashmi
joined
Yadav from Triple ID,
Hello,
Secretary
sir.
Chennai chapter. Hi,
Nice to meet you. Pleasure.
Hi, Amar.
Hello.
Hi.
pleasure to meet you. Same here.
Hi.
I've one thing. I've just given a bit of a small instruction, Pranita. What I've asked them to do is, since we have some more time, I've asked them to play from the residential section itself, so that those who missed out last time have a view of what was covered in the residential section, and it'll be a nice brush up for the others who came last time.
Right.
So although we're not playing the entire thing, we'll play the residential commercial section in a block of about 30 minutes. So it'll be a better way of looking at it, and so there'll be more questions to come.
That's exactly the whole point today of not including a product presentation, was that we really want them to take advantage of the session. So if they don't have questions, what we were thinking is the 4 or 5 of us will have questions for you.
Yeah, because even last time they had a lot of questions, didn't have the time.
So this time we are just going to have questions. That is why I thought if your presentation is going to be 20 minutes, the rest of the 15 minutes at least dedicated to question answers.
Okay.
So the largest chunk being the question and Q&A.
And henceforth, as a suggestion, what I would say is that all product presentations, just ask them to present their videos. So you just play the video so that we save time and all that camera positioning and all that. So
not everyone has the kind of videos I was getting for some products is like very specific to one single product, and that's like you're not prepared for teaching. We've asked, let's see.
Yeah. It's a challenge.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, but then I think they say, if you have a small group of committed people, you can make a difference. So we have started whichever way. And Rashmi is very encouraging. Talking to Dr. AmarDEE, he's of the same mindset as we have at IIIT. Wants to make the whole thing as visual as possible, so that students are able to understand what is the practical difficulty on site, and teach from the site perspective instead of theory. So it was quite enlightening.
I think that is the best way to do, and we have got one of the best speakers, because theoretically they'll be learning at the college, and once they step out in our offices or outside to do their own practice, they'll see the vast difference. So when we such a knowledgeable person from the industry is with us, it's better to it from that perspective, so which will be helpful for them. So Amardeep, so today I was just telling Pranita, I'm going to be back in my student mode. That makes a lot of sense, rather listening to you as a designer, to be very frank, because then a lot of new things come to our mind. So that's what we are going to. So I'll be asking one or two questions as a student.
The more questions, the better, because then with these questions, even I end up learning so much, because then I have to go back and think, what did I do? Where did I do? And then answer. So it's always a give and take process of question and answers.
Yes.
Okay.
I think we should start. It's already
Hi guys. Manjari, do you want to start the session now?
Yeah, ma'am.
Can we spotlight Manjari, please?
Yeah.
Ravi, welcome.
Good evening and a warm welcome to one and all present here. Welcome to Decode. I'm doing my master's in Dr.MGR Educational and Research Institute, Chennai. I'll be your host for today's live session. Thank you for joining us today. So this Decode technical session is the third session, which is organized by Dr.MGR Educational and Research Institute, an institute of Indian interior designers on integration of lighting in architecture, presented by Dr. MGR in lighting research and design. We hope you will find this session informative and useful. To begin this session, I would like to welcome the Honorary Secretary, Institute of Indian Interior Design, Chennai Regional Chapter, Ms. Rashmi Yadav, It gives me an immense pleasure in inviting a dynamic person who's been actively involved, especially in interior design, and has done some significant projects in Chennai and Andaman as part of her family-owned firm Yadav Architect, established in 1950. He's a motivated speaker and has brought in his favorite responsibilities in Chennai chapter of IIID, shouldering the third term as honorary secretary. We're very happy to have you here with us, ma'am. We would like to hear a few words. Ma'am,
One second. Mohana?
Yes, ma'am.
Can I request you to spotlight the speaker? Yes, please.
Yes.
And mute everyone else.
Yeah, I've muted
Thank
everyone.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. So thank you, Manjari, for that wonderful introduction. And it's a pleasure to be here as IIID's Chennai Regional Chapter Secretary. I welcome you all. This is, I think, for the first time I am joining this session. So a little bit about Decode. Let's start with knowing Indian Institute of Indian Interior Designers, which is called as IIID by large, which is founded in 1972 to establish good professional track, practice, ethics among the members within the country and abroad. Today, with nearly 10,000 members and 32 chapters and centers across India and Dubai, IIID has well-defined aims and objectives towards the fulfillment of its duties toward the fraternity, profession, and society at large. IIID has an institutional membership category as well as student category also. We promote research and scientific work in connection with interior design. IID has a special educational vertical under which a continuous education workshops, seminars, programs are arranged for the benefits of institutional members as well as our fraternity. At IID CRC, that is Chennai Regional Chapter, which has started its journey on 21st April 1999, and recently we celebrated the 21st Charter Day. Today, IIID CRC have initiated its first student-based program in 2020 with Dr.MGR Educational and Research Institute, Chennai, to enhance and enlighten in a different perspective in the area of architecture and interior design. To emphasis on this scenario, have architectural practice has been imparted for qualifying architectural students who are future designers. To face the emergence of
Ma'am, excuse me, ma'am. We are not able to hear you. Can you please check your microphone?
Now I'm audible?
Yeah. Yes, please proceed.
Yeah, yes. So IID insists on this avenue as we propose that the learning is expanded through a collaborative activity amongst practicing designers, consultants, academicians, and students. Hence, Decode, design code. In today's practice, the design will pave a pattern and it will keep a track, reverberates with the design due to achieve specific technical requirements of quality, environmental health, and safety management. The crux of this series is to participate the investigation of different building services that consists an enormous range of inquiries which can be answered with supportive case studies in the building service vertical. These talks will enhance the perspective of the knowledge gained through academics and address significant opportunities and challenges during our practice. Decode is a success secret for smart. Let's stimulate it from the grassroots. So again, from Triple ID Chennai chapter, I welcome today's speaker, Dr. AmarDEE, as well as the Dean, Sweta ma'am, and the whole team of MGR College, our moderators, Triple ID members, architects and designers from the fraternity, and the students from the MGR College as well as the different institutions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. That was really nice to hear from you. Now over to Architect Jaihan. She'll be welcoming our Dean.
Good evening all. This is Architect Jaihan from Dr.MGR Educational and Research Institute. I'm really happy and grateful to introduce Dr. Sweta MadhuSudan, Dean, Faculty of Architecture, Dr.MGR Educational and Research Institute. She completed her BArch at Dr.MGR University. She pursued her Master's and Doctorate in Architecture in Satyabama Institute of Science and Technology. She has been always very active in collaborating worldwide with great minds for students to attain knowledge in all aspects of architecture. Now we would like to hear a few words from you, ma'am. Over to you.
Thank you, Jaihan. Welcome all of you. On behalf of Dr. MGR Educational and Research Institute, Faculty of Architecture, and Triple ID Chennai chapter, I welcome all of you, and it gives me immense pleasure to welcome our chief guest, Dr. AmarDEE, who was also my faculty at Satyabama. So I welcome you, sir, and I welcome all the participants who have taken their precious time to contribute to this Decode 1.0 technical session on building services. Thank you all. So please, over to you, Jayan. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for organizing this session, ma'am. Now I would like to introduce Pranita Verma. She is the Decode coordinator representing IIID Chennai, a practicing interior designer with almost 2 decades experience. Her passion is to learn and share learnings with the design community. Decode is a part of this journey. I invite her to introduce our speaker of the day, Dr. Amardeep Dugar. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Jayan. It's really interesting seeing how effectively and efficiently both my moderators are handling the session. Instead of starting with a straight introduction, we did do an introduction last week too. So what I would like all the students and all the participants to do today is first go to the chat box, type out the name of our speaker for the day, and only then I'll go on ahead. Chat box, please. I'm waiting. Name of the speaker. Yes, Dr. AmarDEE Dugar. Dr. AmarDEE Dugar is an architect by training, and then he followed his passion of lighting design. He went on to do his master's in lighting design and then did a PhD in lighting design, and he runs a lot of programs to teach students, to teach young professionals on how to plan and design lighting without getting bogged down by what wattage, lux, lumens, and that is what he shared in his last presentation to us. He has, of course, won a lot of awards from IALD, and he is also the IALD coordinator representing the India chapter, if I'm right, AmarDEE. And
just one small change on that. I'm the former coordinator, so
okay, former.
Have taken up. So just want to be politically correct, don't want to create some political issues later on. That's it.
He has received a lot of awards, including the ones for Hyatt Place in Rameshwaram and Medical Society Building, Berlin, which were awarded the IAS 2018 Award of Merit and IALD 2004 Award of Excellence, respectively. He is known for his lighting design and the way he makes it so much easier for for professionals like us to understand and trust him completely to make the entire interior and architecture of the building look pleasing and become magical just by the fact that he changes the lighting, the way he plans the lighting, the way he tweaks the lighting. So I'm not going to take much of your time, AmarDEE. We are going to hand it over. We're all waiting to hear more about the commercial lighting and exterior lighting and the works. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for this introduction. I mean, it's too much to hear all of this. I can't digest all of this information, honestly. But yeah, just like to say that we did one part last week, and I just want to play certain parts of last week's presentation for this week as well, so that it brings in that level of continuity for all those who have attended last week's class, and also brings in a bit of an introduction to all of those who weren't able to attend last week's class. They'll get a bit of a briefing on from the continuation of last lecture. So I request the IT team to start playing the video, and I'm going to go dark now, switching off my camera and microphone. Over to the IT team. Moving on to the next topic, which is residential spaces. We had already discussed about how residential spaces are all becoming the whole thing about multitasking. So we break up the residential spaces based on activities, not on rooms. So we look at facade and entrance, we look at the foyer, and then we look at what all activities that happen in the residential space. So the first impression of any residence can be provided by the variance in luminous intensity. So when you look at this grand residence, moment your eye goes to the brightest spot, and that brightest spot is the entrance. So lighting can actually start giving these subtle cues. So whenever you have a residence, and if you want to direct your guests or visitors to your entrance, you can subtly do that with lighting. You can either provide bright light or any kind of visual cue using light to show or direct your guests or visitors to show that this is the entrance, so that they don't go about looking here and there as to how to enter the building. So that is the first impression that you create. Next is the foyer. The foyer is the transition zone between the outside and the inside, and it's a very important zone because imagine you're coming from in a hot Monday afternoon. Outside the daylight is really bright, and then your eyes are adapted to that 1 lakh lux of illumination levels that is there on the outside. And then the moment you step inside the house, you're completely blindfolded, because your eyes and your pupils are adapted to the brightness, and then you enter and it's too dark. So foyer is a space which you can use for transition by providing morning and evening light. So this transition light is smooth for the eye to adapt to different illumination levels. And the same thing applies while going from the inside to the outside too, because when you're on the inside, your eyes are adapted to the low level of light. Now, and then suddenly you step into a bright sky, then your eyes again get blinded by this excess of light. So when you have a foyer where there's transition zone, that there's a lot of daylight that is filtering in, or you have supplemental artificial lighting, it provides that time for the eye to adjust to that brightness and darkness. And this is a good way of adaptation level or the transition zone. It is also important to provide seating for the elderly, because when the elderly get older, their eyes take that much more time to adapt. So if somebody is entering into a foyer, it will be advisable to provide a seating zone so that the elderly person can have a sit, wait for the eye to adapt, and then move inside. And the same way, when they want to go out, they can sit, wait for the eyes to adapt to the brightness of the outside, and then they can step outside. This way, they can avoid any kind of accidents, they're tripping over anything, because the eyes have suitably adapted to that. And I know this is beyond lighting design, but all of this is part of overall human-centric design that needs to be taken into consideration. After the foyer comes the hallways and the staircases. Hallways and staircases are movement areas. There is vertical movement, there is horizontal movement. Vertical movement is all the more careful because there's this big chance of people tripping over and stepping and falling off. So you need staircase, especially you need lighting that lights up the treads and the risers so that people can safely navigate a staircase. Corridors may not be that risky like staircases, but then imagine you have a very long corridor. How do you break the monotony of the corridor? That can be done with lighting. So you have decorative elements of light in different intervals. So that way you can help in adding that visual interest and breaking the monotony of the lighting. Moving on to different activities that happen in a house. Let's look at cooking and dining. Now, cooking is one of the more dangerous activities that happens in the house because you're always working with sharp objects, you're always working with hot objects. So you need high horizontal illumination on the worktop so that you know what activities that you're doing and you don't injure yourself performing those activities. Then you need a general illumination, which is soft ambient illumination, which provides an overview and you're able to safely navigate into that area. And imagine if you have a kitchen cum dining, it might be advisable to add a few decorative elements. So if you look at this kitchen area now, you have the horizontal illumination for the worktop, which is really bright. Then you have the general soft illumination, the indirect illumination, which gives you the overall general illumination for safe navigation. And then you have these three decorative pendants for the dining area to add the decorative elements and the element of accentuation. So that way you start layering your light in a cooking or a dining space. Activities also include writing and computers, because nowadays you don't have one single writing table. Your writing table doubles up as a computer table, or a computer table doubles up as a writing table. So what you need is direct and flexible task lighting. One way of looking at it is you have light that is directed directly onto your keyboard while working on your computer, and you have task lights to help you write. So that is one way of looking at it in terms of flexible, cost-effective, and easy to use light fixtures. Reading happens in different areas. Now you sit and read on your table, you sit and read on your couch, you sit and read on your dining table. What is important is light for reading has to be personalized. Direct and flexible task lighting is the ideal. So ideally, light should come from behind your head and it has to be directed directly onto your reading area without any disturbances. So that is the best light for reading. And how that is designed, again, depends on your requirements, the design constraints that are happening. But that is one way of looking about how to do lighting for reading. Lighting for sleeping. Now, that's a very interesting challenge because especially in your sleeping room or your bedroom, there are different types of activity where you have different moods, you have different tasks. So whenever there's a couple using a bedroom, one person might like to read on the bed while the other person wants to sleep. So how do you have lighting that is useful for one and it doesn't disturb the other? Ideally, it's good to have task lighting so that the light is directed only onto the person who's reading and it doesn't disturb the person when sleeping. And the whole aspect of giving mood lighting in a bedroom is something which is catching on. Lighting that could enhance your sleep patterns, that also can be taken care of. So that is something which needs to be taken into consideration in residential design. You have grooming areas, which can be bathrooms, your shaving mirror. And while grooming, you need personalized lighting that is accentuated for self-actualization. Especially when you're looking in the mirror, one has to be careful that you don't have a downlight or a light fixture right above your head, because then it ends up creating these ugly shadows under your eyebrows, shadows under your nose and on your lips. And especially for women who want to put on a makeup, this can become a nightmare trying to put makeup under that kind of a light. Ideally, when you're using a mirror, light should come from the mirror, which is soft, shadow-free illumination, so that the face is very well illuminated from all ends, and you're able to perform your activity of putting on makeup or you shaving your beard. Bathrooms can be slick areas, and slick areas can be also a zone of the maximum number of accidents due to slipping and falling. So you need lighting that enhances the space and is adequate enough for the person to understand that there's water spilled on this area and I need to be careful while walking. So apart from accentuation, this whole element of task lighting is also needed in grooming areas. Moving on to the next set of spaces, which is commercial spaces. Now, commercial goals have different aspects. First, we look at the common areas, which are common to all commercial spaces. And then we look at corporate offices, educational facilities, hospitality functions, and retail areas. One by one, we look at some of the key aspects. Common area of any corporate facility is the entrance. And what is important in an entrance is to create this image, identity. This corporate quality of light is needed because every corporate organization wants to stand apart from the rest. So you need bright illumination. So that is what is needed to highlight the entrance most of the time. After the entrance comes the lobby. Now, lobby is the interface zone between the inside and the outside. So during the day, there needs to be a lot of abundance of daylight for task and security reasons, especially with currently there are a lot of CCTV cameras that are there to monitor who's coming and going out of the space. So the abundance of task and security makes the space that much more meaningful in terms of daylight. And electric light during the night has to have this corporate quality to supplement the daylight. Now, if you look at this two images, they are the same building, but photographed taken at different times of the day. If you look at the floor, the level of brightness, despite the fact that it's day and night, is the same because the use of corporate quality of light. So even during the night, a similar level or similar ratio of illumination is used so that it reflects the same quality of daylight. So artificial light or electric light has to supplement daylight in every manner, especially in lobby areas. Elevators have become a very integral part of architectural design, especially corporate buildings, high-rise corporate buildings. Now, this was a very interesting building because there were twin towers of corporate areas, and the architect and the lighting designer decided to highlight the elevator because this was a glass elevator and there was a lot of vertical movement happening on these elevators. So it was decided to give this building a kind of living characteristics at night. So every time the elevator was used and there was a movement up and down, the light would also change. So this provided this element of dynamism to this building. So this whole building came to life, especially when the elevators were moving, to show that there's some activity happening. So lighting can actually start creating statements and discuss or explain what kind of functions are happening in that area. Staircases are also very common areas. Again, I want to stress this aspect of functionality and sensuality. Now, functionality is in staircases, we need light to facilitate movement. One general trend that has been seen in designing of staircases is that all the lighting is installed on the landings and no light is provided on the treads and the risers. And the truth of the matter is the landings are the safest areas in a staircase, and providing adequate light there doesn't make too much of sense because light is only required in those uh, the movement areas, which are the treads and the risers. So if you look at this design here, all the light has been provided in the landings. The same level of lighting is provided on the treads and the risers. So, and this is key in staircase areas because that balance has to be maintained functionality. If you look at this building, simple tubular fixtures have been used to follow the pattern of this staircase because the architect of this building decided to highlight the staircase, say that staircases are normally hidden and stacked away elements in a building. And the architect, Helmut Jan, who's the architect, who said that I'd like to show that there's an element of dynamism in my building and I like to highlight the staircase. And the additional highlight was provided on the staircase by actually installing light fixtures in the same lines of the staircase. So this level of dynamism was added into the building. So this whole thing of sensuality is providing by reinforcing the movement of the staircase. There are bridges, corridors, and hallways in corporate buildings too. And most general way of highlighting or lighting up corridors is to put lights in the ceiling in the downlight. Now, this was the same twin tower building that we saw earlier with the two elevators. And this sky bridge was used to connect these two buildings. And what was interesting about this building is that the corridor was, instead of putting downlights in the ceiling, light fixtures were installed on the floor to bring about this unconventional quality of lighting. And every time there was movement on this bridge, the lights would change color. So this added that level of dynamism, and people were more encouraged to use this bridge. And this added a different character to this whole place. So there is this whole need of breaking convention while designing. So lights don't necessarily have to come from the ceiling. You can obviously have innovative ways of lighting a building. Here you light it up from the floor and you create this level of dynamism into the building. One of my favorite bridge building examples is called the Bridge of Aspiration in UK. This was a bridge which was prefabricated, designed, and installed in this area. This bridge was used to connect a ballet school with an opera house on the opposite. The students of the ballet school had to actually climb down 4 or 5 floors, cross the road, and climb up a couple of stairs to do the performance in this ballet, in this opera house. So it was decided to connect these two buildings with a bridge. It wasn't that easy because both these floors were on 2 different levels and they were slightly away from each other. So this whole juxtaposed, twisted, parabolic, hyperboloid kind of a structure was designed so that students could directly move from their practice in the ballet school into the opera house, and then they could do their performance here. And what was interesting is the lighting designer followed the architecture, seamlessly integrate these fiber optic elements in the corners to highlight the dynamism and this movement in this whole architectural piece, masterpiece I would call it. And imagine putting a few downlights or a pendant in this bridge. It would have completely destroyed the whole purity and the beauty and this magnificence of this architecture. Although it's such a small piece of architecture, I think it's still a timeless piece of architecture, and lighting only adds to this timeless because it is seamlessly integrated with the architecture. You break convention again. Now, this was again the Merck Surround building in Switzerland. Here, the lighting was designed in such a way where you had integrated lighting in the services. So, while designing the lighting, the conduits were made larger so that all the electrical wiring and data cabling happened within the same casing used for lighting. So all the services were integrated into this whole area, and it highlighted the horizontality of the building. So it's not just aesthetics, a lot of functional aspects can also be very seamlessly integrated with architecture, and you can create a very modern building to it. Facades are a very integral aspects of corporate building because they are used for corporate image. All the exterior and the interior lighting builds onto this corporate image. The project example that I like to show here is the Post Tower in Bonn. Post, the German Post or the Deutsche Post is during in 2005 was the largest logistics company in Europe during that time. And when they built their corporate headquarters in Bonn, what was important was that the whole focus had to be on this building, and whatever lighting that is being designed is at a very low level. So if you see the entrance from the park to the walkway into this whole building, there are no street lights that are designed that will block the view to this building. It's a very pure view that comes into there. And for the facade, a color changing red, green, blue color changing element has been added into this area. So during set hours, which are called the happy hours, the entire building changes color and adds to that corporate identity of the building. Now, from a perspective of light pollution, yes, there is a problem, but at that time, it also created a major corporate identity. Corporate offices also require typical zoning with light. Now, if you remember the earlier slides that I had shown you where warm light is used for cortisol production and cooler light is used for melatonin suppression, this office, the IBM office, is a direct application of that concept. So there was this office area where the task area, and then on the next to it was a coffee shop and a relaxation area. So the cafe area and the coffee shop was illuminated with warm light, and the office area, the work area is illuminated with a cooler light, so that people, employees, when they are working, there's a level of there's a level of cooler light that helps them focus better, suppresses the melatonin, it helps them concentrate, it improves their visual acuity while performing the task. And then whenever they want to take a break and want to relax, they move into the warmer zone, have a cup of coffee, enhance their cortisol levels, feel a bit more rejuvenated, and come back to work. And these two color temperatures create a nice visual demarcation between these two spaces. So although there is no physical demarcation, it's just with the two color temperatures of light, you can make out that what is the work area and what is the relaxation area. Moving on to educational facilities. Now, schools are no longer what they used to be because students have also become aware, kids have become aware about where they are studying, and they're always looking for a school which they can feel proud of. This was a school building in Switzerland, and the school was obviously very keen or particular about their corporate image at night. And a very simple solution is being used. These buried green lights are being installed behind the blinds. So at night, it creates that corporate identity for the school, and green was the corporate logo. So they use that same color to highlight this building. Daylight plays a very important role for visual acuity and better concentration levels, as is shown in this library of another school. So there's a lot of interplay of daylight that is happening, a lot of open windows, so that bring in a lot of daylight in this area. Now, the use of black ceilings and track fixtures is because schools are no longer what they used to be of just single classrooms, because nowadays schools are evolving. Students want to do multiple activities, they want to do group activities, group discussions, and sometimes they also want to have their own individual spaces. So the lighting has been designed in such a way that there's a lot of flexibility happening in that area. So every time a student wants to move and have their own personal zone, they can move this furniture and the light moves along with it. So they can physically move this furniture and have their own reading areas. And when they want to have closer discussion areas, sit with their teachers and do their own craft sessions, there's specific lighting that is provided for that. So there's a lot of layering of light, there's a lot of multiple activities within the light. So each of these lighting support the multiple activities that happen within the school area. Hospitality design. Hospitality poses a very interesting and exciting challenge, because hospitality is more like a home away from home. Although you are on a business visit, but you still want all the comfort and facilities of a home when you're staying in a hotel. So whenever designing hospitality concept, you need to have a holistic concept that unifies all the spaces. And I'd like to discuss one very interesting example of a hotel called the Ice Hotel. The reason why it's called the Ice Hotel is because it has this really interesting concept of ice that is being used here, and there's a lot of interplay of light, because this hotel is in Sweden, and Sweden, as mentioned earlier, being a Nordic country, there's always a dearth of light. Sorry, this is the Light Hotel, not the Ice Hotel. So everything that is there about this hotel is only about light. So when you have drinks being served, there's a lot of light that is playing on the table. So this whole concept of light is taken at the bar level. This concept of light is taken into the lounge and the restaurant. So whenever they rest outside in the lounge, it's a darkened hotel. And then when they enter the restaurant, it's all bright. There's a lot of light. So the feeling is that of having light. This whole concept of light is taken into the bedrooms too. So everywhere there's so much of light because there's a dearth of light in Sweden. So this need was felt by the clients who designed this hotel, and they made everything about light. Depending on the mode you could select. And what is the most interesting aspect of this whole hotel was the facade, because there was no facade design, facade lighting design. Whatever happened on each of these individual rooms was reflected onto the hotel facade, and it gave a completely dynamic image, and it lived up to this image of light hotel. So everything about this hotel was about light. So you have a holistic concept that unifies all the spaces, right from the facade down onto the lobbies, to the interior spaces, the restaurant, and then to the bedrooms too. Retail design is all about selling. We all know that. Selling happens through shop windows. Selling happens through merchandise. Now, this is a shopping mall in Germany, and it was an interesting shopping mall because it was completely made of steel and glass. And during the day, the architecture takes precedence, and glass is a very tricky element because you cannot illuminate glass. It's transparent and light can just pass through.
So what was
என்கிட்ட சொல்லல
illuminated is all the advertisement banners behind the glass. So what it did is that during the day, the architecture has one set of characteristics, but at night, the glass facade melts and the advertisement take precedence. So that was an interesting element that was added in this whole retail design, where you can completely change the layers of architecture with lighting. Retail design is also about visual merchandising. So whatever lighting that is used is done to highlight the visual merchandise. Now this was a shop which is a very small boutique shop selling really small beauty care products. So considering the spatial restraints, if you notice, each of these shelves is illuminated, and even the exit sign was custom designed to suit the characteristic of this space. So lighting enhances visual merchandising, and it becomes a part of the overall visual merchandising strategy, depending upon the selling the retail product or the selling of the retail brand. Moving on to the final section, which is urban spaces. Lighting involves a lot of master planning issues that include nocturnal tourism, social interaction, and rejuvenation of history. One of my favorite examples that I like to talk about is again in London. It's called the St. Martin's Square. Now, luminous points are created within the city, which link the town and the city, and nocturnal activities are created around it to promote all the social activities at night, just like in this space here. What was interesting about this square was that it was a dead square during the day and at night too. So the entire community said, let's create some activities at night. So this whole square was illuminated, buried light fixtures were put in that area, and it created an element of dynamism. So at night, the whole space had a completely different characteristics with dynamic lighting, and people really felt activated and regenerated to see this whole area being illuminated in such a wonderful manner. And it generated a lot of activities at night in this area. So natural activities are promoted by means of social activities at night in this area. Lighting can also be used to rejuvenate history. This is another example of a cathedral in a derelict cathedral in UK. Now, without lighting, this was a haven for all antisocial elements. There were drug addicts, there were prostitution in this area. And the municipal council decided to do something about it because it is a heritage site. And what they did was the whole place was illuminated at night. So lighting is used to bring to life this whole derelict and rundown area. And lighting is also used to highlight the importance of historical building, just like this building, which is the Brandenburg Gate in Berlin, which is illuminated at night and has become a very important, most visited highlight point in the Berlin night sky, especially when visitors come to Berlin at night to visit this building at night. So summarizing my lecture, what I would like to say is that there are three key factors that have to be taken into consideration while integrating in the integration of lighting and architecture. First is to consider the quality of lit environments experienced by human beings. So building code compliance doesn't necessarily assure quality. Just because you've met the required lux levels of 500 lux or 1000 lux or whatever lux doesn't mean that you've designed a quality environment. You've just met the basic minimum requirements. There are a lot more aspects to be looked at while designing quality environments. What are those environments? Is to focus on ergonomics, sensory pleasure and delight, and human health, just like we had discussed. And finally, it is important to seamlessly blend lighting with architecture. Discrete and concealed light fixtures, like we had seen in the Amsterdam example, more often than not complements architecture. And if and only if luminaires are required to be focused, that's then they made focus only when they're absolutely necessary. So a value engineering and an appropriate assessment of the architecture has to be done. And if you want to put a decorative light fixture that is going to be the most important aspect, then only then you use a decorative or a luminaire that becomes the focus of the space. These are the images that I've used in my building. So it's part of the general procedure of photo credits. Thank you very much for listening to this lecture. I hope this lecture has highlighted a few key elements of integrating lighting and architecture. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. It was much informative. I hope it will be useful to us. We have learned more about lighting in residential and commercial sector in various aspects too.
Hello.
Thank you so much for giving this insight.
Sorry, sir. Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Go over.
I'm happy to take any questions from anybody in the audience.
Now, I think we should start our session. Thank you so much, Amar. I think it was a wonderful presentation. What I really liked about your presentation was that it does not bog us down with numbers. That's color temperature and the kind of lux lumens required and how you have to mix that. Instead, it put forth something that we all really value, and that is the human experience in it. So with that, I would invite our participants to just raise your hand or put your question in the group, and our moderators will call you out to ask your questions to the expert for the day. We're really privileged to have his experience available to us, so please do make the most use of it. If you want, you can just put it in the chat box and I'll call you out. Or Manjari, are you taking over?
Yeah, ma'am. Sure, ma'am.
Sure.
While our participants type out their questions, maybe you should come up with your questions if you have.
Sure. I think Manjari has already she has a question for you, so I was leaving it to her to ask. But Manjari, are you speaking? You need to unmute yourself.
Am I audible, ma'am?
Yes.
I think Saran had a question, ma'am. Saran, are you there?
So, I mean, start off till the next question comes, Dr. AmarDEE.
There's one question. How can we give lighting in living area because we use only ceiling lights? How to brighten them? It's from Harika Hari.
Now, first thing you need to understand is what are the activities that you do in a living area. Now, there's a very bad myth that is going on, at least in our Indian context. What I've seen is that brighter is better. No, just because it's bright doesn't mean it's better or good lighting. Imagine you go to a very posh restaurant for a very cozy dinner. Have you seen any posh restaurant and a cozy dinner with five-star hotel done very bright lighting? No, it's very dim lighting. So does it mean that it's bad lighting? So again, with even if you have ceiling lights, you need to zone out your living area in terms of what are the activities that you're going to be doing in a living area. A living area is used for maybe entertaining a few guests. You also watch TV. You might be watching a cricket match. You might also want to throw a party in that area. So already have 3 or 4 activities in that area. So what you cannot have the same lighting for each activity because each is a different thing. When you're watching a movie, do you want bright lighting? No, you don't want bright lighting. You want very dim lighting. So that's how you need to try to adjust the lighting. That's where you bring in the concept of layering of light. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4 different layers of light, and depending upon what activity you're doing, you switch on that layer, and you can make the maximum benefit of the activity and the lighting in that space.
We have another question from Lokesh sir. Can you tell us a little in detail about lighting the staircase areas to avoid accidents?
In my presentation, it was mentioned when you're on a staircase, the most focused activity that you need to be doing is that you need to have a measure of the height of the riser and the width of the tread. So lighting has to be such that it illuminates the risers and the treads so that you are able to see that properly, and you don't want to trip on the staircase. And okay, accidents are sometimes are bound to happen. It could be by the carelessness of somebody just got drunk and is not able to see the lighting. But we as designers have to be very careful. So lighting up the height of the risers and the width of the tread is very important. And also, it's also important to know that where the handrail is, because handrail is a very key element where people can hold. Now, I've seen a lot of places, even in residences, where they have illuminated handrails so that people can actually hold on to it and they know this is where I need to hold on to when climbing. So that is also something which can be highlighted.
Okay, sir. And there's another question. Where do they use ball lighting? That's from Kavya Madhu.
Ball
Where?
lighting.
What's ball lighting?
I have no idea. What is ball lighting? It's new.
Maybe she means the pendant lighting.
Okay. See, pendants are used if it's like a globe that you're talking about.
Yes.
Pendants can be used anywhere. It could be on a dining table. It could be used in a meeting room. It could be used in you might have also seen those glowing spheres in a party area. So there is no hard and fast rule where you want to use. But I think I like this phrase, ball lighting. I want to use it somewhere in the future. So there's no hard and fast rule.
Okay, sir.
I would just add to that question, Amar, for you. What is the height at which the pendant light should stop in case they're dropping it from the ceiling?
Very good question. It's that is something which I, as a designer, I'm always struggling with because I specify a height. Imagine now there are different pendants where they have. You've seen the semi-globe pendant where you can see the lamp in a restaurant. Height of that is very key because idea is that you bring that light as low as possible so that it is below your eye level, so you don't see the bulb. What they normally do is they put it right at your eye level, and if that lamp is still there, if it's visible, then it causes glare. So when you're having a important discussion with somebody in front of you, and if that is causing glare, then it's a problem. So again, the height has to be determined based on the activity. What is it that you're doing there? And then it's ergonomics. When you design a height of the table, height of the chair, you know what is the height because it depends on the height of the knee. So that's where you design the chair. The same thing when you sit, you need to just imagine what is the activity people are going to be doing there. Is it a mostly seated activity where they're just going to sit and have a discussion? Then based on that, determine the height of the pendant. Or if it's just like a bar counter where the people are only going to be standing, then you determine the height based on the standing height. So a lot of times lighting design is about common sense. You don't need any rocket science here. Simple common sense, just try and visualize what activities your user is going to be doing, and then determine the height of the light fixtures.
And also the fact that it shouldn't hit your eye level, right? It shouldn't
Yes,
be
yes,
directed.
yes.
Right. Go on, over to you, Manjari.
There's another
There's
Vishnu Lalit. What are the trending lighting design softwares to learn and work on in the field? Is there any softwares to?
There are definitely a lot of softwares, but what I would like to say as designers is that lighting design software cannot do the design for you. Now, just tell me, can AutoCAD be an architect? Can be considered an architect? Software is just a tool that you want to use to able to deliver the designs that you have. So the same thing with lighting too. A lighting design software will not do the lighting for you. It will just be used as a tool. There are different lot of software. There's Dialux, there is Relux, there is AGI, and there are other softwares which have plugins like Lightscape into 3D Studio Max. So whole lot of softwares that are there. You just do a search on Google, you'll find entire list. But what you need to understand as a designer is that just like AutoCAD cannot be an architect, the same way any lighting software cannot be a lighting designer. So it is your own creativity that will design it. It is good to learn softwares, but nothing like holding a pencil and being able to draw the sketch for your architectural design. The same thing, I use my pencil and sketch to design my lighting first, and then move on to any kind of software.
Okay, sir. And then next question is how the colors, the light colors are changing in a facade, like different colors at different times. Like how is it changing?
In physics, you might have heard there is something called additive color mixing. So you have red, green, and blue. So when you mix red and green, you get the yellow light. When you mix red and blue, you get the magenta light. And you mix blue and green, you get the cyan light. So it's the same concepts that is used in that facade, where they have three color tubes, red, green, and this project they used yellow. And then they mixed each of these additively, and with the ratio and proportion, you can mix these colors and match and get whatever color that you want. So it's a very simple concept in physics, optical physics.
Okay, so the next question is from Sana Salim. What were the technical or design challenges that you have faced while designing any commercial spaces from your personal experience, sir?
The biggest challenge that I face is trying to explain the contractors to install my light properly. That's I'm sure even all the other experienced designers, interior designers, will face the same problem. But technical challenges come mainly now with the use of LEDs, because LEDs is still a very new technology. A lot of people haven't understood LEDs. The electricians and who all used to work, they work with the conventional technologies of tube lights and the normal bulbs. So that is the biggest technical challenge, people trying to understand this new technology. And it's the same thing of if there is a recessed depth that is there in the ceiling, uh, what kind of light that needs to be used. If there's an air conditioning vent or air conditioning duct coming there, then there are changes where the whole design has to be changed. So you name them, all are there. It's all the same problem which an interior designer faces, I face as a lighting designer too.
Okay, the next question is that it's from Vilasini ma'am. What decides the lighting level in shopping complexes or shops? I've seen very bright lights more to attract crowd, but what happens to energy consumption? Is there any rule for maximum lighting level?
Retail is a sector which demands bright light, and especially the high-end retail. Now, if you go in within shops like Louis Vuitton, they are the super high-end brands, and Louis Vuitton has its own set of norms because they are used to certain levels of lux levels of 5,000 lux or 10,000 lux, because the merchandise needs that level of lighting. So yes, in retail, there's nothing called energy, because they are high-end brands. They're making the money, and bright light becomes a part of that. But in other areas, like in shopping complexes where there is corridor lighting, that's where in the common areas is where you can play around a little, because what I normally try to do is that when everywhere when there's a shopping complex, there's a lot of shop windows.
Shop windows have very bright light, close to 10,000 lux. And a lot of the shop window light is filtering into these corridors. So that I use as a consideration. So when the standards say that in your corridor you need to provide 200 lux, I designed for something less than 200 lux. And then when the client comes and asks me, oh my God, why you only giving 150 lux? We need 200 lux. Then I tell them, sir, don't you think the shop windows are going to be switched on? Imagine the amount of light that is going to be coming out from those windows, because all that spill light is going to come into your corridors, and that will balance the additional 50 lux that is needed. So by providing lesser light, I'm saving some energy in your corridor areas so that that can be balanced out from your window. So that requires a little bit of, again, smart thinking, a little bit of common sense, and then you need to convince the client that it's not just the lux level. There is a lot of other surrounding brightness that is there, which will come into play into these areas.
Hello.
So I hope that answers
Hello.
your question.
Hello.
And next question is from
Hello.
Sneha Pradeep. How the light act in apartment areas
Hello.
and what are the lights used in it?
Again, I want you to go backtrack to your
How the light acts in apartment area.
yeah.
Okay.
In an apartment area, what is an apartment? It's a residence, right? So what kind of lighting are you providing in a residence area? Your living spaces, your dining spaces, your bedroom spaces, your study areas, your corridors, your staircases. It's the same aspects. It's just being put into a apartment block. So that's how you analyze it, one after the other. I have shared the entire handout of this lecture with, I think it's been probably emailed to all the participants. So I would suggest you take that up and read it to understand what you can do in residential spaces.
And the next question is from Ramya. How long does smart light last and are they worth the money?
Smart light. See, thing is, the whole concept of smart lighting is something which I haven't completely understood or even tried to discuss. Smart lighting is when you add something like an intelligence to lighting. So where it's something like you add a sensor, or you can control the lighting with your smartphone. The life of the light is primarily dependent on who the manufacturer is or where you're buying it from. If you're buying it a cheap Chinese product, then obviously it's not going to last you for more than a couple of months. But smart lighting is about how you can add that intelligence to your lighting. So when your lighting is connected to your smartphone, it becomes smart lighting. And if you can, just like how you can control the music with your smartphone, you start controlling the lighting, the brightness, and you can change the color of the lighting. So that is smart lighting. And you can add different facets to it. So that's something which is there. I mean, it's a marketing term that is used by a lot of people, but if you, it's nothing great into it. It's just you add a little bit of technical intelligence to it, and that becomes smart.
Thank you. So, and the next question is from Keshavaya. Light follows architecture, architecture follows light. What would be right? How does it change the experience?
There is no right or wrong in architecture and design. You can have light that can follow the architecture. You can have architecture that can follow the light. If you look at the works of Le Corbusier, when he designed the chapel of Ronchamp, I'm always asked with this question: did he design this with light in mind, or did he design this with architecture in mind? Because when you look at the example of Ronchamp, the play of brilliance of lighting, it's almost like a two-way thing. Here, in some places, light follows the architecture, and some places the architecture follows the light. So there is no right or wrong here. Both are correct. Both work in a completely seamless and different, in integrated manner. Although what I would say is that there is no architecture without light. So if there is no light, you cannot experience architecture. So that I can say. But whether light follows architecture, or architecture follows light, it's an endless debate. Nothing right, nothing wrong here.
Okay, so there's another question from Devakumar. How do we design lighting for an open air restaurant where you will have to tackle insects attracted to the light?
You have to be environmentally conscious. So when you're having an open air restaurant,
and you might want to invite the insects for your dinner, because then that's the way you work, right? You don't want to disturb their lifestyle, and that is something which I'm always very consciously designing for, because we as human beings are a very selfish being. We only think about ourselves and what we should be doing. We never think about the environment. So that's why COVID happened, to come back and make us rethink that we are not the only beings in this planet. There are a lot of other beings around us. We need to be aware and conscious about it. So, tackling the insect problem, what we are, there is an organization called the Dark Sky, International Dark Sky Association. And what it actively promotes is that darkness. And what it says is that people are losing out on dark skies because there's too much of light that is coming on, there's too much of light pollution. So while designing an open air restaurant, what you need to be careful of is that uh, there's going to be an eating area and there's going to be the peripheral areas. So you need to design in some places where the insects get attracted to that light and they not come and disturb you in your food areas. And your restaurant food area has to be as low in minimal lighting as possible. You try and use warm lighting, especially like the fire wood that they have, so their insects do not get too disturbed by it or don't get too attracted to it. And that's how you design the lighting for that area.
Okay, sir. And there's another question from Vidya ma'am. Can we get an idea about your research in lighting, like about your topic and more about it?
There are way too many topics that I'm working on. I'm looking at biophilic lighting. I'm looking at light and health. I'm looking at aspects of smart lighting, virtual lighting. So it's not just one topic that I'm looking at. We're looking at multiple different topics, and each of these are interconnected with each other. If you go on to researchgate.net and you do a search for my name, you will be able to find all my research topic and research papers on academia.edu as well. And all my papers are there free of cost. You can access all these papers, although you just need to register and log in into that account. And you can download all my papers there. I think there are more than 100 papers that you can look up and download from that website on all my research topics.
Okay, sir. Rashmi ma'am wants to ask a question. Please.
Yes.
Yes. So I think rather than typing, I will ask the question if it is allowed.
Yes. Yeah,
okay,
of course.
So when we were talking about layered lighting, at times because of the luminary or whatever, we are getting the shadows. So is the shadows are acceptable? I mean, see, in the residential lighting particularly, we had always the vision there should not be any shadows, because then only it is considered as a good lighting. So can I have your opinion on that?
Have you ever entered a dense forest, ma'am?
So there will...
What is the beauty of the forest? It's that play of light and shadow.
Exactly.
So if there is no shadow, you cannot experience light. If there is no light, you cannot experience shadow. And I think lighting design is a wrong term, because what I would call it is that it is light and darkness design. Because both these have to be balanced, integrated, and designed, and that is what true design would be. Now, regarding use of shadows, yes, shadows can be a bit of an annoyance factor, because especially imagine you're trying to write something and the shadow of your hand comes on the paper. That is bad shadow, because it disturbs you from doing your work. Imagine you're trying to read something and the shadow of your head comes onto your book. That is bad shadow. So that needs to be avoided and taken care of. But in certain cases, shadow is actually maybe a very good thing, like I mentioned, in a forest area, or you would just want to sit in your balcony, and if you have an overhang, too much sunny, that shadow becomes such a blessing, because you can sit under the shade, enjoy the outside view. So again, shadow has to be designed just like how you design lighting. It's not just residential areas, be it commercial or in any other space. Both lighting and shadows have to be designed, and they both work hand in hand. So a completely shadow-free illumination might or might not be possible. It may be useful in some area. Imagine a person is in an operation theater, a surgeon is trying to work. In that place where there's a lot of precision needed, a lot of concentration needed, there you don't want too many shadows falling because the focus has to be on saving the patient. But in certain areas, maybe like a restaurant, you want a little bit of shadow coming into play. That's fine. Or imagine somebody is going on a first date and you're talking to the girl and there's a downlight placed on the girl's head and the shadow falls on the eye and the nose, and she's, instead of looking like a pretty girl, she starts looking like a ghost. Then the first date is gone. So there, shadow can be a bad thing. So it's a very subjective proposition here.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Next question is from Jaihan. When should we plan lighting?
As early as possible. So whenever you're doing your sketch design or preliminary design, concept design, try to include lighting from the beginning. And I also tell my clients, my architects, interior designers, try to involve a lighting designer as early as possible in the project, because then we'll be able to do much more justice to the project. Because a lot of times lighting design is brought in the end, and then they say we have put the false ceiling and now we want to do the lighting. There's not much we can do because we can't break the ceiling now, we can't move anything here and there, the ducts are put, everything is planned. So try to plan the lighting as early as possible.
Thank you, sir. There's another question from Devakumar. What's the required lux for a vertical bio wall in the interiors?
I'm not going to answer that because bio wall don't work on lux levels. There is something else called it's called flux density in terms of the I keep forgetting that word, I'm sorry. It's called photosynthetic flux density, and that is something which has to be taken care of. Lux level is not a measure for bio walls, so I wouldn't answer that question because then it will give a very wrong impression that it's only lux level that is needed. So what I would recommend you to do is do a little bit more Google search and try to read up a little bit more on how to what is essential for horticultural lighting, and then you'll have a better understanding of that.
Okay, I think okay, there's Sana Salim who's still, you're still getting questions. Are you okay with taking a couple of more questions, Amar?
What I can do is maybe if they can type out all the questions, then I'll just write them out and answer them, because questions I think will keep coming.
I know, and lighting is so interesting and fascinating also now. When you have light shadows, how do you use the shadows to actually highlight the spaces?
Yeah.
Maybe
just one more question from Sana.
Relevant, so I will take it up. It's from Lokesh on what kind of lighting is required while using laptop or a digital screen to avoid damage to the eyes. I think that is something that all of us are doing, especially in the lockdown. So
damage to the eyes, I mean that you cannot completely reduce the damage to the eye. What you can do is that there has to be appropriate contrast. Don't work in a completely darkened room. Work in a space where there's a lot of soft illumination, there's a lot of diffuse illumination, generic ambient illumination in your working area. And if you're working in the evening, try to use a warmer color temperature as much as possible, because your body clock is more attuned to the warmer color temperatures of say 3000 Kelvin or 2700 Kelvin. And it has to be as much as possible a soft illumination, diffuse illumination, light that is bouncing off the ceiling like a cove light or bouncing off a wall. So that would be a lot more advisable in spaces like your computer screens and all that. So that dark spaces, what happens is that you're looking at a very dark room and then keep looking at that bright screen. That causes the strain in the eyes, and that is bad, and it is bad for your eyes.
Thank you so much for answering that. And I have one last question for you.
Sure.
How can we look so much nicer in a Mac showroom mirror? The lighting there.
If you notice Mac, they have a very generic type of lighting. What they do is they use a lot of diffuse light, and everything is white, because Macs
primary color is white. So when you have white, the interreflections itself make that whole place so much more whiter. It avoids the shadows into your face, and everything makes it that much more brighter. So that's why when you enter a Mac showroom, you're like, wow, why is it so bright? Because they don't use any dark colors. It's all white, 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 whether white ceiling, white floor, white walls, everything is white. Even the computers are white. So the interreflection itself makes it that much more brighter. And it's all soft lighting. They don't use that sharp light onto that object. So that's what makes it.
And on the mirror, is there a particular kind of light that even in your presentation, you were saying that the face should be illuminated from the front?
Yeah. See, now if you've seen those some of the movies where they have these lights around the mirror,
Yes.
those
The
are
vanity
actually
light.
one of the vanity lights. Those are probably one of the best lights because they instead of don't use those sharp LED kind of light. Use the even with the LEDs they have the sharper, softer, diffuse, milky white glass on it. Those are probably the best light because they give you a lot of shadow-free illumination and light up your entire face in a three-dimensional manner. So you need lighting that is three-dimensional volumetric illumination that lights up your face, and that's what is the ideal thing for mirror lighting.
Thank you so much. I am sure a lot of us have taken a lot of points from you today. And I would hand it over again back to Manjari or Jaihan to conclude the...
I think we'll move on to the feedback session now. I request Anju and Abhi from Dr.MGR Educational and Research Institute to share their views on today's session.
Thank you, Manjari. Thank you, sir. It was a very informative session, obviously. Actually, we came to, we learned about how light can enlight space using lighting and what are effects it could create on our building and our environment. And today's session, I personally feel I got to know more about lighting today. Thank you so much. It was very
Thank you, Anju.
It was a nice presentation and we had a very good protective time at this lockdown.
Thank you, Abhi and Anju.
Just to intervene, that I think we had R. Ravi, our chairman-elect, also in the audience. Ravi, if you're here, we would love to hear your feedback as well. R. Ravi? Yeah, I think his signal keeps coming and going, so maybe he's again stepped out. So we'll continue. Over to you, Manjari.
No, ma'am. I now request the coordinator architect Vidya Naveen, who's been actively involved in organizing this session along with.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. We as a team of Decode, we're very proud and happy that you are a part of our event. It's really and informative and interactive session. I'm really happy. Thank you so much. We as a team, I would also like to thank Rashmi for her presence. And Pratika, they find it so much. I would also like to thank and HOD and all the seven and the student coordinator, not to forget. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Yeah, ma'am. We are now at the end of the session. Thank you all for attending Decode. I hope the session was very informative to every one of us. It was definitely an eye-opening session on commercial lighting. So hope to see you all again on our next session, next Decode session on electricals. Details will be shared shortly. Once again, thank you to all the dignitaries and participants who are present here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Wonderfully done session.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
AmarDEE, sir.
Yeah.
Hi, sir.
Hi.
Yeah, thank you for accepting for our IID invitation. So on behalf of our IID, I have to thank you, sir.
Thank you too. It was a pleasure interacting with the entire team.
It's a really a very good for us.
And And as we are always planning, once this COVID is over and we are allowed to meet in person, we should have a separate session for triple ID members exclusively with you, sir.
Yeah.
Sure.
That will be a good session.
Sure.
On that note, Rashmi, I would like to add that he does excellent workshops for professionals alone. So we would love to have one session for us.
That's one. So
Yeah,
we will
we
do
have
that.
another 2 or 3 program with our AmarDEE sir. Because,
Yes.
I saw him last 10 years. He's doing a lot of work. I very much impressed with his works also. I've seen a lot of his project presentation also. So we have to do something. Definitely.
Okay.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
We all feel
Bye-bye.
grateful at least to meet you through this forum, Amardeep, and we shall stay in touch.
Yes, we will.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yes,
Thank
stay
you.
safe.
Wow, Vidya, that was like really nice. No, so many questions. It needs to be really, really. It was good, and in fact, well conducted and
Thank you, ma'am.
easily handled all the different.
I must say it's quite great. The whole MGR University and Pranita. It's really very flat and it is student. That's what matters a lot. Because professional getting it and explaining, not necessarily every time it happens. But I'm seeing them just following. And every time all the sessions are done for the student level. So you have achieved a lot till now. All the best for all upcoming sessions. All the best. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.